This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. With agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong. And featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Soye. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pioneer. Proud to work with farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on earth.
Welcome, everyone, to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. It's a little bit different. It's our Best Of edition, as we share with you the stories of some of the interesting people we meet across the United States. In one rural community after another, you find businesses that have been established to serve farmers and ranchers. In many instances, they were started by farmers or ranchers. Such is the case in Odebolt, Iowa, population 1,000, where Vance Lundell makes parts for farmers' combines.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm, like a lot of guys my age, grew up cleaning hog houses by hand, and believe it or not, I wanted an auger to get manure out of a hog house. This goes clear back to the 60s, and I talked to a college professor about it, and he said, well, they've tried augers, but everything then was steel, and kind of forgot about it for a number of years. And years later, I was back home farming. We were remodeling a hog building, and I wanted an auger to get the manure out, and it just kind of hit me that night that why not make the auger out of plastic, and nobody was doing it.
I'm struck often by the fact that in many small communities across the heart of the country, there are businesses like yours that have been started by entrepreneurs. Obviously, geographically, you're right in the heart. But what else comes together to make it possible? What had to all happen for you to be able to reach this point in your advance of your business?
I would say that part probably gets down to the people. Like you say, we're in an area, this is what we work with, this is what the problems we're confronted with every day, and try to figure out ways to make it easier. But to really make it come together, I guess that gets to the people.
Good employees like Matt Reeder, with their roots and hearts in farming and with that great rural work ethic, can make fine workers in a plant like Vance's.
As we're out farming, we realize there's got to be a better way to do this or something like that. That's an idea like that's basically what Vance started the company on. As we're out working, we're always thinking about things. It also gives us a really good chance to try it, and we try some things, and well, that wasn't a very good idea. Before we have to have some other farmer try it out and figure out it doesn't work. All the products that we release, typically we start out testing them ourselves.
In 3 decades of doing business, Vance Lundell told me, yes, he's seen some good times, and there have been some tougher ones.
One thing I learned is salt away some during the good times. I kind of feel bad for people that were maybe just getting into farming when everything was good. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. But I guess if I haven't learned anything else, I know it is cyclical. You want to plan for the bad times when it is good.
We enjoyed our visit with Vance Lundell in a town called Odebolt. Now let's scale up the plant size a little bit as we go to Grand Island, Nebraska, right in the central part of Nebraska. Mike Schaefer gave us a tour of the plant where CNH makes combines.
One fact we like to share with our customers is that we're only 80 miles away from the continental center of the United States. You can take a day trip out and go catch the flagstaff and the tombstone that shows you are in the continental center of the U.S. Great position for us to be in the distribution of the combines that we make across the world.
Very much the corn and soybean production area of the United States, and not far from a major wheat producing area too.
Absolutely, just north of Kansas there, and it's a great supply for the custom cutter business that we support. Based anywhere within the wheat belt, for us to be able to source both our Case IH and our New Holland equipment from this location really works out well.
What should we know about the size of the plant, the magnitude of the output?
We're about 1.5 million square feet between 2 different locations. We've got about 4 different buildings that we operate out of. We currently employ about 650 employees. Great workforce that we have here at our non-union facility. A lot of people come from the surrounding towns, also here within Grand Island, and they've got a great Midwestern work ethic. Their connections that they have to the farm economy really helps them relate to the issues and the opportunities that our customers go through. And they can keep that in mind as they're building the equipment, who this goes to, people that they know and can relate to. It helps them put that pride into the product.
You mentioned pride. That's something that we could sense as we went through the plant. The pride of ownership of the job, of their particular role in bringing that combine to market.
Yes, of course. They really took on the red product back in 2003 and 2004, happily adopted it into the family here, and have really run with it. We have no issues getting people to wear Case IH red and generate a lot of excitement behind that. We've got the Husker Harvest Day show, which is only 15 miles away from this site, and again, another way for our employees to stay close to the farm economy and to our customers.
Some of these units also move to other nations.
Yeah, we ship about 33% of what we make goes outside of North America, so across Europe, somewhat in Asia, a little bit in South America, but a big portion of what we make goes overseas. We actually have a rail dock behind the facility where all of our product goes through the Port of Baltimore to go out to the world. Australia is another big customer of ours. The remaining 66% approximately stays here in North America, split between Canada and the U.S.
Mike said there's no shortage of the attention to detail to make sure the quality is there in those machines they turn out of the plant at Grand Island.
Well, we'll see as we take the tour of the plant. We have a lot of inspection processes within the plant. Coming out of paint, we paint everything before assembly to get good rust protection into the assembly joints. We have inspection stations coming off of the paint line. We also have inspection stations scattered throughout assembly. If you save all your inspection for after the combine is built, you can't get into the interior and see what was done on the inside. So that is a lot of how we inspect the combine. We also have a great feedback process that came through a world-class manufacturing philosophy of finding those issues and getting them back to the operators that may have caused that and getting them trained to make sure they build it correctly from that point on. We have our inspection processes at the end of the main line. We have another inspection process or runoff at the end of our trim line. And then we'll take a small percentage of our combines, run them around a bump track with a header dyno, and really test out the combine fully loaded over bumps. And then we re-inspect and look for any other issues that we may find. So it's a very thorough process that we go through.
How many of these units coming off the line here at Grand Island already have a customer destination? That unit would be destined to someone in particular out there who ordered it.
Yeah, that can vary depending on I'll call it the economy and what's going on. You look at our economy 6-7 years ago, we had a very high percentage of our combines, our units, that had a configuration exactly set to the way a customer fed it through a dealership to our plant. These days, with the economy being what it is, it's a little bit tougher. So we have a little bit higher percentage going to the dealership, typically configured for a typical customer in that area, where it might take him a little bit of time before he then finds the right customer.
So the dealer will have ordered that. He specified what he wanted.
Exactly. We don't build a single combine off of a stock configuration. We wait for those dealership configurations to come in. We want to build and touch that combine just that first time, make any corrections that we need to, but then any alterations that are needed can happen over at the dealership.
One thing that I sensed going through that plant, that each employee has the big picture in mind as well, not just his or her individual job, but they seem to realize where they are in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah, they do. They really take all the inputs from outside, from our inspections. They work with each other. They have each other's back as they work to build these units and ensure. We actually have some of our quality networks, we call them, where they'll check each other's quality really within the process. So they do see the big picture, and again, that connection to the farming community that we have out here in Grand Island helps them stay really close.
You could sense the pride they take, the employees in that plant at Grand Island, Nebraska. We put goats in the spotlight next. Stay with us. Well, have you ever wanted to own goats? That's not been high on my list. We have some neighbors who have them. They love them, and goats can be very useful. Let's check out a business that's been formed by two gentlemen. It's called Goats on the Go.
Goats on the Go was started about 6 years ago by two families yearning to get back to their agricultural roots. These goats are used for grazing purposes not only in commercial settings, like parks and houses, but also in agricultural settings such as CRP ground, pasture, and timber, which you see behind me.
About 6 years ago, Chad and I set out on this little adventure of raising goats and doing a targeted grazing business. I had gotten into goats on a hobby scale, basically just to give my kids something to do in the summer, and fell in love with it. Wanted to produce more goats, wanted to move beyond that hobby scale. And, as many Iowans know, unless you grew up on the farm or you're going to inherit some land or you have access to land, it's hard to get into farming. And I called Chad up and I said, I've got this great idea. What do you think of this? And Chad is what I call a serial entrepreneur. And he said, well, does it work? I said, yeah, it works. We've done it right here on our property. And he said, I'm in. And that was going on 6 years ago. And things have been speeding along ever since.
These goats are serial grazers, which makes them ideal for conservation practices like grazing invasive species.
So we don't train our goats to eat this particular kind of vegetation. It's just born into them. It's part of their innate ability to take junk vegetation that no other livestock can eat. They really prefer to eat brush and broadleaf weeds high off the ground instead of with their mouths to the ground. And so we're just taking advantage of their natural characteristics. They also engage the public really in a way that no other livestock can.
Working May through November, the goats take on large-scale and small-scale projects depending on the size and scope.
So over 10 acres, we try to run between 200 and 240 goats on them, and that'll get you about an acre a day of vegetation clearing. Smaller jobs, just based on trucks and trailers and you're going into communities, we try to shoot for about 40 goats on a job, and that gives you about an acre every 4 to 5 days. And so that gives the customer a lot of time to enjoy it, but it still does a good job of mobbing the area.
Interestingly enough, Chad was a little apprehensive at first to see if goats really did graze the way Aaron claimed. And he said many agricultural producers have reacted the very same way.
They were like me, they don't believe it when they hear it. We've dealt with farmers and they said, well, they're going to eat all the grass my cows would eat. And we're like, well, studies say that produces more grazable ground. And then we go into their pasture and the goats eat all the weeds and brush. And as soon as they're done, we pull them out. They hardly even touch the grass. And so they're usually really shocked that that's how the goats eat. And because it's so different, they're the only livestock animal that eats head up.
Future expansion for the Goats on the Go herd will include retailing directly to consumers in what they're calling butcher boxes. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Delaney Howell.
Our thanks to Delaney Howell for that story. Quite often meat producers are crying out for more processing capacity. They need it to be able to harvest their animals. Jamie Johansson went to Colorado to tell us of a story where producers took matters into their own hands.
Weld County, Colorado is home to the largest concentration of lamb feeding in the world.
Feeding has become, over the years, kind of a necessary thing to provide the fresh American lamb market with product 52 weeks out of the year. The other thing about this area is we're very centrally located. We can draw lambs from all around us. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, the Montanas, Dakotas can all come this direction. We're basically feeding the same thing you'd feed cattle. Corn is still the basis of our ration here. We're feeding ground hay, corn silage. We're feeding some wet distiller's grain from the ethanol industry, some pressed sugar beet pulp from the sugar industry. So we try to utilize the feedstuffs around us.
Market volatility is a continued concern for the industry, with the increase of imported lamb over the years. However, Mike shared nothing but optimism for the future.
These younger minds will come along with you talk about millennials and their taste for lamb and trying new things. I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity for growth in different areas. I think we provide a different product altogether. The mild flavor and taste profile of domestic lamb is just different than a grass-fed program. And if a person's got a taste for grass-fed, they should lean towards a New Zealand or a grass-fed Australian product. If you want a good quality rib chop or lamb chop with some marbling and a mild flavor, you're not going to go wrong with domestic lamb.
Continuing our story of U.S. lamb, we headed down the road to Greeley, Colorado to visit Mountain States Lamb to see processing firsthand.
Every lamb that we harvest here goes through our instrument grading system, where it calculates quality and yield grade as well as red meat yield. And then everything we have is also graded by our USDA grader. We are a USDA facility. We can track lambs all the way as lots back to the producer. We have natural, source verified, and our natural program is antibiotic free from birth, and we can source them all the way to the producer.
We are seeing a switch in food trends across all facets of agriculture, and lamb is no different. Brad said lamb is becoming cool again.
We've seen that with the younger generation, the millennials, where from 15 years ago, where we sold a lot of just whole carcasses in the industry, we went down to breaking those down into further cuts. And a misconception is you got to know how to cook lamb. Well, in today's fabrication and marketing and what the consumer trends are, we tell people to cook it a lot like you would beef. Right now, we're in about a 6 to 7 week ramp up for Easter. Our philosophy is get prepared to meet the consumer's demands and be ready to service our customers, as opposed to not starting early enough and not being able to fill the demand for lamb and get that on every table we possibly can. So we see roughly a 25% increase in flow through the plant just with lamb to go out. It's a huge leg season item for the consumer. But we've also seen increase in racks and loins, where people are getting more creative with what they want to put on their dinner table for that special Easter or Passover occasion.
The next time you walk the aisles of your local grocery store, consider lamb. And not just any lamb, domestic lamb. It will be labeled born and raised in the USA. Leg of lamb is certainly the most popular this holiday season, but you might also like to try
shanks, leg steaks, loin chops, rack chops, Denver ribs, shoulder steaks, and ground lamb and stew meat and kebabs, a whole plethora of items that you can increase your culinary arts to experiment and have fun at home with the family.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Jamie Johansson.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We appreciate it. They are our line of first defense, the people who protect us at the ports of entry of the United States, protect us against some kind of foreign pest that could absolutely wreck our food supply. The story is coming up. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Let there be no mistake about it. Farmers and ranchers are truly caring for the land on which they operate. And increasingly, farm organizations are recognizing just what they are doing out there. Jamie Johansson has this report with the National Corn Growers Association Stewardship Award winner.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, welcome to Schlichting Farm.
Thank you, thank you. So this is where it all got started.
This is where it all got started. My grandmother immigrated here from Poland in the 1920s, got on a train and headed to Rice, and met my grandfather off the train, got married, and started farming here.
Their farm is located near Rice, Minnesota, a community of 1,300 people, 80 miles northwest of Minneapolis and along the headwaters of the Mississippi River and its many tributaries.
Today we farm potatoes, kidney beans, corn, and some rye, cereal rye, mainly for cover crop, but we do market some of it for whiskey. The soils here were very, very poor, and to me sustainability is to make the soils better than they were.
Rick grows a lot of the rye, or all the rye that he uses for cover crops right here on the farm. He plants, it's sort of unique in that he plants the pivot corners, harvests that rye, and then puts it back on the field in the fall. And it's a good example of a sustainability practice that Rick is doing to do his part to control wind erosion and take care of his soil.
Well, when we first started farming some of this land, there was places where we had sand blowouts that even under irrigation wouldn't produce a crop. And today you can have a very hard time finding these spots. The soils have enriched themselves.
In any given year, I'm sure you're faced with different challenges because of Mother Nature and being this close to the Mississippi. What do you do to kind of mitigate those?
We mitigate that mainly by putting small amounts of nutrients down in order to feed them when they need it, and in a leaching situation there really shouldn't be much there to get away.
For the Schlichtings, stewardship is a process. one that involves key partnerships with expert consultants and the latest information and technology.
My name's Rick Gilbertson. I've been the agronomist for SCHLICHTING farms and WATERWAYS farms for 3 generations now. Started with Rick's father, working with Rick now, and working with Jocelyn, his daughter, as she takes a more important role in the business.
I'm Jocelyn. I am the 4th generation on our family farm. After working in accounting for 10 years in the cities, I decided to come back and be a part of the operation. My experience is in data analytics and accounting, and I'm trying to bring that technology background into farming, make better use of the data that our equipment's already capturing, and turn that into results on the farm.
Cover crops have proven to be a key component to rebuilding and protecting soils.
I think cover crop in the sand is probably the biggest one. It helps you hold any excess nutrients in the soil throughout the winter, keeps that from leaching, and it also keeps the wind erosion down to where you're not losing your topsoils. Topsoils are priceless to us here. We don't have very much of it.
Sustainability isn't a word we used growing up. It's just something that we did. And I thought that's just the way farming was done. That's the way we've always done it. There was always talk about improving the soil, nurturing the land, providing wildlife habitat. That's always been part of the conversation, but we never called it sustainability. It was just good farming.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Jamie Johansson.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We appreciate it. Yes, farmers take pride in being stewards of the land, they say. That's not a throwaway phrase for them. Our technology guy likes computers, but he likes vehicles too. Chad Colby takes a look at a pickup truck and what it offers.
It's no surprise that technology keeps advancing, especially in our vehicles. If you haven't been in a late model car or pickup truck lately, there'll be some technology there that's certain to get your attention. As you can see in this late model pickup truck, it's got a 12-inch display inside it. We're talking about a display bigger than the original iPads. If you're not familiar with an iPad or comfortable with it, you might not like this truck. The thing, though, that I appreciate from automobile manufacturers is how they integrate things that'll help us in ag, like this toolbox you see right here. This is really nothing new, but they've added some new features this year, like a 110 power plug. We all know how convenient that would be. Now, I don't know how convenient it is, but it's a nice feature where you can push a button on the remote and it will activate the tailgate to open. But this week, I wanted to share something that is new. Not reaching in and pushing the tailgate like you're used to. We've been doing that for as long as pickup trucks have been on the road. But I want you to watch my friend Bill Tyler as he reaches in this time and he presses down. The tailgate opens like a cargo door. You can run the truck with one of those open or closed, depending on what cargo you might have. The thing I liked about it the most is how easy it operated. Again, you see Bill's hand go in. You just push down if you want the cargo door to open, and it opens up very easy. It gives you great, simple access to inside the bed of your truck. Again, another great new innovation of some technology we've never seen before. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Chad Colby with us the year round, giving us great views of the technology of agriculture. There's more coming up on the Best Of edition of This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by ADM.
Welcome back to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness, our opportunity to share with you some of the places we go and some of the interesting people we meet. People like Jim LUEBKER. Now, when you come in from some foreign country, the agents are there to greet you. Some of those folks are there for the very reason of protecting our valuable food supply from a foreign invader.
What we want to do, the United States Department of Agriculture, we work closely with them, and they publish disease status of the countries and the regulatory guidelines for the different products that come into the United States. And that may be fruits and vegetables, it might be animal products, seeds for planting, seeds not for planting, live plants, and horticultural plants that come in. So we are looking at all of those to try to exclude insects, diseases that affect plants, insects that affect animals, and animal diseases from coming into the United States. Foot and mouth disease hasn't been in the United States since the 1930s. African swine fever hasn't been here for a while, and it could be, if it were to come in, especially here in the Midwest, a family farm farrowing operation or a large-scale confinement operation would be devastated if that disease were to be able to get on their farms.
How do you respond then when USDA says, all right, African swine fever is a concern? Is it just a matter of looking at that inbound passenger list to see where they're coming from?
We have to remember that at O'Hare International Airport, we have thousands of passengers that come in every day. We have probably millions of dollars worth of cargo that comes in every day, and we rely on the declarations that passengers make and on the manifests that the importers provide U.S. Customs so we can have a better chance to look at the products that are coming in. In the cargo environment, permits are required. There might be veterinary certificates that are required, and we review those as a regular course of business. The wild card, of course, is the people that smuggle, either intentionally, or the people really aren't aware that what they're bringing in is a problem and can have an impact on our agriculture operations across the country.
The document, when you come into the country, states there is a penalty for violation.
There is a civil penalty. The civil penalty is for failure to declare. It's not that you intended to do anything. It's just that you failed to declare. You have a declaration form that you complete before you come to the entry part of the airport for U.S. Customs. If you stop at a kiosk, either for a regular kiosk or global entry, or use the app, there are questions relating to agriculture. Do you have any plants, plant products? Do you have any animal products? Have you been on a farm or a ranch? Are you bringing biologicals in the country? And that, I think, is our biggest challenge, is people get in a hurry here at the airport and they want to run out the door and they don't want to trigger anything that would hold them up. But the way agriculture is set up, we're not concerned whether it's prohibited or not. All we want to do is have the opportunity to inspect it. And if it's prohibited and it's declared, all we're going to do is take it and you go on your way. If you don't declare it, the civil penalties step in, and we can issue civil penalties of $300 per occurrence for the regular passenger, or it goes to $500 for airline crew members and global entry passengers, because they have knowledge of these rules beforehand.
They should know better.
They should know better.
And when those folks perhaps don't know better, they get some education in a very gentle way from the agents on duty. And some of those agents have 4 legs. Jessica Anderson at O'Hare Airport in Chicago works with one of those canines on patrol to protect the United States food supply.
We actually obtain most of our dogs from kennels or shelters or rescues. So our dogs do need a little bit of training and guidance before we get the dogs. What they're looking for are dogs with a very high food drive, because all of our dogs are food rewarded. They get cookies every time they do a good job. So as long as the dog has a very high food drive, it doesn't take them very long to get the dogs on track to finding the odors. So they train them for a month, 2 months, 3 months before we get there. Once a new handler arrives, they have 2.5 months with that dog to learn how to find the food items. And once they graduate, they can move on. A handler like myself that's returning, we only have to go back for 4 weeks. The difference is, I believe the dogs are, they're smarter than us. We have to learn their behavior and get used to the idea of watching a dog show a change in behavior and learning how to read it. So it's, I want to say the dogs are very intelligent, and a lot of times we don't understand how to read them, and it's the handler picking up the little differences in the change of behavior with each dog. Every dog is different and they react differently. So as soon as you learn how to read a behavior, boom, you're on. You're a great team.
When the canine officer is retired, where does he or she go?
Typically.
Will the officer sometimes?
Most times we'll take the dog, yes, most times.
It's quite a relationship gets established.
Of course, it's a big bond. It's a huge bond. You're with them for anywhere from 6 to 9 years of your life.
It is very interesting work that they perform indeed, and it is crucial work. And if you've been in a foreign land and you're traveling back into our country, you have plant material or maybe fruit, or perhaps you were on a farm, be sure and mark that form truthfully. Our food supply is way too important to risk. Well, now this may be a crop you've never thought about. We get to enjoy such a wide array of food in the United States, and depending on the region where you are, maybe you've had crawfish or crawdads, some folks will call them. Jamie Johansson has the story of how they are produced.
Welcome to Bayou Country, southern Louisiana, where we're here to learn the art of crawfishing.
I've been crawfishing now for probably the last 25 years and owner of crawfish ponds.
It's a way of life. It brings jobs to locals. It's a source of tourism. It's just a tradition in southern Louisiana. So let's learn more about farming crawfish.
September and mid-September we'll start flooding. We'll bring out the crawfish, and then when the water gets into the crawfish ponds, the crawfish will start coming out. In a 3-month process of flooding, they'll do a molting process where they'll come out, have their babies. The young will start growing, and then the adults will start shedding, molting out to where we can harvest them for process.
Crawfish ponds are comprised of a variety of vegetations.
What we have here is farmland that can't be harvested rice. So we have wild vegetation, we have alligator grass and different types of vegetation for crawfish. Really, we find it really good for crawfish.
Stacy is out on these waters 6 days a week, baiting and checking cages, starting at daylight.
Every 2 days we'll run them for the winter time because of the water temperature and whatnot, and it takes just that amount of time for them to make it enough for us to run and catch. So that's why we do it on 2-day rotation. Whereas in the summer times, it'll be a lot warmer. Crawfish are a lot more aggressive. We can run them daily.
I was able to snag a few myself, and trust me, it's not easy to balance your weight on a boat and not fall in. However, the finesse of Stacy and his team make it look easy. Once we caught our bellies full, we met up with Randy, a fishery biologist, seafood processor, and chef, to learn more about the industry and get a taste.
Louisiana has an estimated at over 200,000 acres into cultivated production. There's 2 sources of production of crawfish, wild production and the cultivation in through ponds. There's a lot of crawfish that's produced, and there's probably an estimated between 12 to 1,500 individual farmers that produce crawfish.
And I think it's time to boil our catch.
The live crawfish are put into hot boiling water, and you bring them to a boil, and you don't boil them very long. Maybe a minute or 2 is all it takes. When that water comes to a boil, and those crawfish are cooked. And so what we do is we shut the fire down, and we add the seasoning after we turn the fire off. And we cool them down, and we let the crawfish soak for about 20 minutes. In certain parts of the state, they do crawfish bisque, where you grind up the crawfish meat and you stuff the head. And that's more towards New Orleans. But fried crawfish tails on po' boys, we do that here. You got crawfish stuffed bell peppers, you got crawfish jambalaya, where you cook crawfish in a gravy and you cook the rice in it. Crawfish fettuccine, crawfish, we do everything that you do with shrimp or anything else, we'll do it with crawfish.
Randy said his favorite way to serve it up is crawfish bisque. Mine? A simple boil and Randy's secret seasoning. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Jamie Johansson.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. We appreciate it. Now, that makes me want to have some crawfish. The river is so important to us in many ways, not just for what we can harvest from it, but what we transport on it. That story is coming up. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness, the best of edition. It's a mode of transportation we take for granted, but we should not. The ability to move commodities on our river system is absolutely essential to farmers.
This waterway is critical to our business and to a lot of businesses besides agriculture. The amount of material that goes up the Mississippi and the Illinois to the Chicago area, let alone to the functioning the Corn Belt for our commodities going downriver.
When you know some of the numbers from just Illinois in 2018 had a little over 83 million ton of product move up and down the river. That took roughly 2.1 million semis off the highways of Illinois. This thing's very important. My grain goes south, rock salt and other items come back north to take and run salt in the wintertime on the city streets. Most of that comes up the river and comes back. So the barges are normally full, a lot of time both ways.
So the rivers and locks and dams are often, out of sight, out of mind. People don't see them. You're not sitting behind a barge tow. You're not waiting at a train crossing. So you don't understand the importance of waterways. For each 15-tow barge, that equals 1,050 trucks on the road. That's wear and tear on the infrastructure.
You compare what a tow is burning fuel-wise versus what 1,000 trucks are burning to go that same distance, there is no comparison. This is a much, much safer, much more environmentally friendly, more economical way to ship bulk commodities within, along the river system in this nation.
I think the necessity of this hidden wonder that we have and this hidden gem that makes us the competitive product we are, nobody else in the world has quite like the Illinois and the Mississippi waterway system.
Locks and dams go way too long without getting rehabbed. So, most of our facilities were built in the 1930s. Right now, we currently have 69 locks that are over the 80 years old. Each lock is designed to last 50 years. After 50 years, the risk of failure goes up, which this lock right here where we are today is well past that 50-year design lot and receiving a major maintenance program, which will add additional reliability for 25 years.
The first stop, it was full and it was functional, got to see it, but now to see this empty, to see it drain, to see it dry, and see the large equipment down there, it puts it in perspective, and you can get to see the tunnels and different things. It is a little overwhelming to know, to have this all shut down in 1 year, to get it rebuilt, to get the new gates in and get it back functional in such a short amount of time is a little overwhelming. And from eastern Colorado, we don't get to see this much water in a lifetime. So it is the importance there. It's moving our product, not necessarily the corn we raise in Colorado, but it's moving our product down the river to New Orleans so we can get it across into export markets.
All the work this summer between our own plant, borrowed equipment, rented equipment, contractors, and all of their expenses, this is somewhere in the ballpark of a $200 million effort on the Illinois waterway this summer at those 5 locks.
An important effort that was carried out during the pandemic year, and apparently it was successful despite the COVID-19 problems. Well, we export so many different things, and sometimes they are products that help farmers in other lands produce their food. And sometimes they come here to see the genetics that they can use in their animal agriculture back home. Farm broadcaster Steve Bridge has a story on that.
As a group of cattle farmers from Mexico toured a genetics and custom collection farm recently, you could tell that the connection from farmer to farmer was strong. But you could certainly be left to wonder what the trading relationship would be like between our two governments. Bruce Kluver of Ag World International, a live animal and genetics exporter, says those connections being made during the visit are vitally important, and it underscores what's at stake.
They import pigs, they import dairy cattle, beef cattle, all types of genetics, the goats that we spoke of, and they are trying to improve their meat production, their milk production, because a lot of it, or some of it, is exported to the United States by feeder cattle and different things that come into the United States or other countries. They're exporting different meat products to other countries now also.
Wherever you look, trading relationships are being tested. But in ag, those connections that have been built are standing the test of time, says Bill Nolan, the owner of Interglobe Genetics, a provider of custom collection services for domestic and international clients.
One of my largest customers actually is from Switzerland, and he will buy bulls here, and then we house the bulls and ship the semen wherever for him.
Bill says the international market isn't a make or break for him, but it does allow for a bit of diversification. He's seen a slowdown in business from other countries in a part of ag that's been suffering here in the U.S.
Here of late, it seems like a lot of the countries are experiencing what we experience, especially in the dairy industry with low milk prices, and so times are changing there.
Bruce says the desire around the globe in any country is to feed people better. That alone helps exporters stay positive, but there is a chill in the air, and there's no escaping it.
Well, it's vitally important. If China closes the doors, I mean, that is our biggest market for swine genetics especially. But any country that closes the doors on any of the ag products affects us roundabout ways. It can really hurt our business.
Reporting for This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Steve Bridge.
Our thanks to Steve Bridge. His base of operation is Springfield, Illinois. Yes, we export animal genetics. We still export some live animals. Many years ago, I was offered the opportunity to ride along with a load of hogs to China in a freighter. I respectfully declined. There's more coming up on the best of This Week in Agribusiness.
Yeah, North Carolina is the only state in the country right now that can export sweet potatoes out of the U.S.
Well, how are you with sweet potatoes? Do you like them? Back during the holiday season, Mrs. Armstrong fixed sweet potato pie. It was mighty fine. A few weeks ago, I was out on a sweet potato farm near Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Zach Smith was out of the field bringing in his crop near the town of KERNERSVILLE. That community was put on the map by tobacco, a crop still grown in North Carolina. But many growers have transitioned to something else, and Zach Smith went from tobacco to sweet potatoes. And his 2020 crop looks like his best ever, he told me.
You need rain, always, and we've had that this year. We've had a substantial amount of rain, more than we've had since probably 2008. This crop has been probably this biggest crop that we've had, and this is our 13th year of doing this. We transitioned out of tobacco into the sweet potatoes several years ago, and for as far as growing, we have red clay land, and it grows it good. We fertilize, we don't spray. We just use natural fertilizer, and that's, we're not like the guys down east that have nice sandy land, but we still roll out pretty sweet potatoes.
America gets about 40% of its sweet potatoes from that state of North Carolina alone. And some of those growers sell their crop to the world.
Yeah, North Carolina is the only state in the country right now that can export sweet potatoes out of the U.S. Ours stay local. A lot of the guys down east are contracted out. They send some to Canada, they send them to grocery stores, to your local stores. We send ours to local food markets and individuals.
I don't know if most would consider the sweet potato a health food, but Zach Smith shared with me that they might be good not just for man, but also for man's best friend.
They're good if you have digestive problems. They say the white ones are real good for your digestive systems. I got people that come and get them for their dogs because their dogs have digestive problems, and the vet says the best thing you can feed them is sweet potatoes. So have a lot of people come get them for their self and their animals.
I confess to Zach Smith, I also eat the skin of the sweet potato. Is that wrong?
No. It's perfectly fine to eat the skin. I eat the skin of a regular baked potato. You can eat the skin of a sweet potato. It's just as good. These are a lot sweeter than some of the other varieties. So it's, people dab them up with the butter and the brown sugar, and that's fine too. And My mom, she cooks them with, she'll put a little bit of syrup on hers when she cooks them, so makes them a little that much sweeter.
I noticed they were leaving the small sweet potatoes behind in the field. They're considered to be culls because the consumer wants a nice sized potato without blemishes. I asked Zach Smith how his wife Diane fixes sweet potatoes.
She makes excellent casserole, and she'll chop them up in cubes and fry them in the oven that way, cook them in the oven. And she's got her little secrets, which I don't know nothing about, but I just know I like them and they're good when I eat them.
A very enjoyable day with Zach Smith on the farm, Kernersville, North Carolina. North Carolina, the #1 producer of sweet potatoes in America. All across this land, we have great farmers and ranchers working so hard to produce our food. We feel so blessed to be invited into their operations and to be able to share that story of agriculture with you the year round. Thanks so much for joining us here. I'm Max Armstrong. So long.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Pioneer and ADM. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.